It started with a yellow slip stapled to my old rusted gate. I almost missed it as I was coming back from the farmer's market, juggling the sacks of fresh corn and tomatoes. The paper flapped in the wind like a taunt, code violation, property, in breach of community standards. I stood still, stunned. I had owned this 6-acre plot for years, inherited from my grandfather who built the home himself with his father. It had always been outside of any official HOA jurisdiction. The nearest residential development was nearly a mile away. How could they have authority here? But as I read further, I noticed the letterhead, Silver Pines Residential HOA, a place I'd never even set foot in. They claimed their boundaries had expanded to include my property. They declared my barn unsightly hazard, and in 30 days, unless I removed it, they began legal proceedings. I was livid, but I didn't know then. This was just the beginning. The first thing I did was march down to the HOA office, an overly clean building in the middle of their uniform neighborhood where every house looked like it was copy-pasted from a catalog. At the front desk, a woman named Rhonda greeted me with the fakest smile I've ever seen. "I'm here about a notice posted on my gate," I said. "Oh, you must be the owner's property." "Yes. We've recently annexed the land into our jurisdiction. It's part of the Silver Pines beautification project." "Annexed? You mean stole?" She didn't flinch. "Everything was approved by our board and county. You're now subject to our guidelines. Your barn doesn't meet aesthetic standards." That barn had been there since 1934. My great-grandfather built it with hand-sawed timber. I asked to speak to the HOA president. Enter Douglas Miles, slick back hair, expensive watch. The kind of guy who wore boat shoes but never set foot on water. "Our mission is community excellence," he said smugly. "That barn of yours, it lowers the visual integrity of the neighborhood. We have buyers to impress." I left before I said something I'd regret, but I wasn't walking away. I was digging in. That night, I pulled open the old cedar chest that had sat at the foot of my bed since I was a kid. It still smelled of tobacco and pine. Inside was everything Grandpa had ever kept safe: tax receipts from the 40s, his marriage license, and his property deeds. I unfolded the original map of the land drawn in his own hand. It showed not only our 6-acre homestead, but an old boundary line I didn't recognize. A dotted red line. And there, scribbled in the corner, easement agreement minus 1,911. It referenced a document stored in the county archives. I had to see it. It took 3 days of digging at the dusty county building before I found what I was looking for. A legal covenant from 1911 between my great-great-grandfather and the county. An easement to access the spring that fed all the wells in the region. In exchange, the county agreed that any land containing or controlling that spring would remain independent from future residential ordinances unless consented to by the original family line. That family was mine. I had legal protection against the HOA's claim. And that spring, it still ran through the bottom of my property, feeding the pipes that led to Silver Pines. Armed with the documents, I requested to speak at the next HOA board meeting. They weren't happy about it, but legal pressure worked wonders. The room was full of neighbors, most of whom didn't know their water came from a spring on someone else's land. I laid out everything: the easement, the covenant, the well, rights. Then I dropped the bomb. If you enforce this demolition, I'll be forced to terminate the water line easement that serves every home in Silver Pines. Gasps, murmurs. Douglas turned purple. "You can't do that." I held up the signed covenant. "This says I can." Days later, I came home to find the barn broken into. Nothing stolen, but my documents had been moved. I knew because the box I kept them in had fresh fingerprints and had clearly been rifled through. Then came the fines. Daily notices, trash bins improperly stored, grass to tall, unlicensed structure. It was all bogus. But I knew their game now. They wanted to pressure me into folding, but they didn't realize I was just getting started. I reached out to an attorney named Marla Stevenson, a property rights specialist. She'd helped farmers fight illegal land grabs before. When I showed her my documents, she leaned back and whistled. They've got no legal standing. And if what you say about the spring is true, you could countersue and shut down their entire operation. That's exactly what we did. We filed a countersuit against the HOA, violation of existing land covenants, unauthorized annexation, harassment, and trespassing property damage. We also petitioned the court to void any authority the HOA claimed over my land. And finally, we filed an injunction to terminate the water easement agreement, pending legal resolution, meaning they were on borrowed time. Once word spread, neighbors began coming to my door. I had no idea the HOA was built on stolen land. One woman said, "They've been hiking our dues every year," said another. "Where is all the money going?" Turns out I wasn't the only one angry. I just happened to be the first with the tools to fight back. Section 10. Digging deeper. Marla and I uncovered financial records showing mismanagement and shady payments, board members paying contractors who were relatives, inflated landscaping budgets, fake maintenance reports. When we compiled it all into a report, it painted the picture of a classic fraud machine. We submitted it to the court and the local press. The trial lasted 2 days. The HOA's attorney tried to claim I was a delinquent resident refusing to follow guidelines, but our evidence shredded their narrative. We proved the HOA had no legal jurisdiction over my land. They violated a century-old easement covenant. They retaliated against me through harassment and trespassing. They mismanaged community funds. The judge ruled in our favor. Not only was the HOA banned from touching my land, the court ordered an independent audit of their finances. Within weeks, the audit exposed thousands in embezzled funds. Douglas and other board members were arrested. Rhonda, she disappeared from the office the next day. Silver Pines HOA was officially dissolved 2 months later. Their name removed from county records. My barn still standing. During renovations, to reinforce the barn, I noticed something strange under the floorboards. A concrete slab. My grandfather always told stories of a storm bunker he built, but I thought it was just a tale. With some help, I uncovered a steel hatch. Inside was a Cold War era bunker, untouched for decades. And within it, not just old canned food and water drums, but a steel filing cabinet. Inside, land records, blueprints of the spring system, a backup copy of the 1911 covenant, and one final shock, a mineral rights claim signed in 1958, showing our family's legal control of subsurface resources across the entire valley. Today, one run a small heritage farm on the land. The spring has been preserved as a historical landmark. I even set up educational tours for local schools. What was almost lost to a greedy HOA became a story of revival, resilience, and justice. The land that was nearly stolen now stands as a monument to the power of records, roots, and a little righteous fury. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: never let a clipboard and a polo shirt intimidate you off your own land. History has power, paperwork matters, and when you stand your ground with truth, you're stronger than any HOA. So next time someone tells you your property doesn't fit their vision, tell them to take a walk through history, because some battles are won not by shouting, but by unsealing a 100-year-old document. Subscribe to DD Stories, because justice is best served cold and underground.